Ghost Cult Magazine welcomes in the great Troy Van Leeuwen of Gone is Gone. Troy, how are you today?
I'm well, thank you for asking. Yeah.
Yeah. I like to start all these interviews as much as I'm stoked to talk about this new record and art and anything you're interested in have going on. Obviously, it's a really crazy time in the world, so I always like to just start, hopefully, with most of these with a check-in, make sure you're okay, the band is okay, your families are safe and fine as well as could be. I hope that's the case.
Yeah, everyone that's in my circle, bubble, whatever you want to call it, is doing well, and family is doing great. Yeah, I mean, we're lucky here. Nothing too worrisome going on here. So, pretty boring.
Well, boring under the circumstances is good. And
Yeah.
what's not boring is this awesome new record, the very long titled "Everything Happens for a Reason, Then Nothing Really Matters at All." It's very succinct, that title. Maybe not in as many words, but certainly gets to the point, maybe of what the album's about, and maybe what some of the meaning is in the songs.
Yeah, I mean, originally we were going to release it in two parts. And so the first part was going to be the first half of Everything Happens for a Reason. And then the second part was going to be the Nothing Really Matters at All. But then the more we worked on the art, the more that we were just thinking, it feels like an album. And to me, I I love albums. I grew up in the 70s and the 80s. And I like looking at vinyl and like looking at all the artwork, especially if it's a gatefold and putting it on headphones and looking at the art. That's what we were going for. So we decided to just have one succinct album. And I'm happy we decided to do that.
I'm glad too. I feel like the album, if anything, in the weird streaming age, as much as singles are cool and EPs are great, you guys had a bunch of both of those and an album. I feel like the album sequencing, the patience it takes to sit and spend time with an album. I listened to this a little bit today, and it
Yeah.
really feels like it's got a great flow from track to track. It all belongs together. Just in terms of even a business, just the business of making records and releasing records in this turbulent time. I feel like albums, they still stand the test of time. My favorite albums, I go back and listen to them. I don't skip anything. I'm sure you don't either.
I do the same thing. Yeah, I like full length albums. If I'm gonna dive into something, I want to take the time and singles are great and EPs are great. I agree with you, but just feels like right now, yeah, I think people are at home and they can get into it. They can dig into it. I'm sure everyone's digging into Netflix and Hulu and every kind of streaming service that there is out there. But also, I'm taking a lot of time just listening to music, uh, like full on. So I feel like, yeah, I, I like albums right now. I think it's a good time to dig into music and see what artists have to say other than what's actually happening. See what the reaction
Right
is.
on. It's a good escape. I need it.
Just
I'm so great.
yeah,
I'm so grateful to have music in this year. I gotta say, more than ever in my life, probably.
yeah,
For sure. And I was gonna say, you mentioned the album cover. Love the artwork. It's got a very Roger Dean thing happening, but it's also like a nice topography and a strange kind of spatial thing, like outer space plus weird landscapes. I like it.
yeah. There's the artist that did uh, the majority of like the images and all that stuff. His name is Corey Myers, and we've worked with him a couple times before. Actually, he's done T-shirt designs for Queens of the Stone Age and a bunch of other people. I mean, that's kind of where I got familiar with his work. But we were releasing these singles over the last year, and we just kept giving him just the title, and he came up with something interesting, without any sort of background of what the song was or even what it sounded like. So he seemed to like dive right in and understand just the title itself. And so we worked on all these singles, and all these singles became part of the artwork. The inside sort of gatefold has all these images that are in this landscape that's very, we were going for kind of a, yeah, like a vintage sci-fi paperback book, and I think he nailed it. And yeah, it's kind of a combination of like space and digital and the Matrix, and kind of like, you know, when you have a landscape like that that's made out of a grid, and it's so big, it makes you feel small, and that's kind of, it's kind of the the feeling of when we were writing these songs, about the way the world kind of has been going, and sometimes you feel like insignificant, and you know there's depression, and there's like, especially during the pandemic, I'm sure everyone's had to take a deep look inside, so it's not always easy to do. So yeah, we wanted something that represented kind of all those feelings, yet it's still kind of cold. It's like delivered on a cold platter. Like, well, this is kind of the nature of reality right now. So, according to us.
Right on, and right on. What's interesting to me is conversely, I find that even though the album is very electronic and, very, it goes in interesting directions. It's very warm and not cold at all. I actually find the music strangely uplifting, despite it can be a little, synths can be a little dark, guitar textures and layering can be a little, add depth and darkness. But I love how kind of up, in a way, oddly upbeat and emotional the record is.
I'm glad you said that, because that's the whole point, is that you're interpreting it a way that was hopefully achieved, because when I was describing the artwork, it's cold, it's dark, but yeah, there's a lot of like the lyrical stuff. Troy Sanders did the majority of it. I did some of it, and we kind of worked together. And working with him, he's got this. He's a warm, genuine person, and the way he delivers, lyrics, there's no like, there's no hiding, there's no front. He's a, and when he sings, and he always says, with this project he gets to sing a little bit differently, compared to like Mastodon or Kill If It Killed, and he kind of described it as like, this is like his the couch that he lays on when he's talking to us, his therapists. So you get this warm feeling that he's opened up, and just kind of saying, this is the way I feel, and it's okay. So yeah, there's the juxtaposition of art and the music. I think I like that there's that difference.
Indeed, and what I love about Troy's vocal performance, I just want to single it out for a second, is, and I don't want to take away from Mike's awesome vocals also, but what I love about Troy is when you take that heavy metal grit out of his voice a little, you get like a very strangely familiar David Bowie, David Gahan thing that is like really very gothy and great. And I don't think it's something people will ever expect to get from Troy, but obviously he can do a lot of different things with his voice. That's wonderful.
Yeah, I agree. He's really opened up into a different, like, yeah. I mean, that's the whole point of this project too. Is everyone wants to do something that they normally don't do. So that's kind of what keeps our heads in it. Um, you know, I I kind of underplay in the band. Although there's still guitar kind of everywhere. This record is definitely more keyboards, piano, synths, samplers. Even Tony was like, I don't want to play drums on this record. I want to program drums and sounds, and so it was more of a challenge for everyone to kind of get out of their comfort zone, and make something completely I guess different for all of us. And so I think we did a pretty good job of capturing that. and still maintaining the essence of what the band initially is.
I really like what you guys are cultivating here because I know there was some talk. I know you guys have shunned the idea of a super group, and it's getting, as much as I'm super excited that a lot of there's a lot more freedom now in the business, where there were years you couldn't go do a guest spot on somebody's album without contracts and things, or you had to do it very undercover. But I really like that you guys have really really created this identity that is, it's cool on the, on the publicity side and on the journo side to see this collection of talents together, but musically this is really its own animal. And I also feel like you can't pigeonhole this band. Your next record might be completely different. The EP was different than this. Echolocation was different than this. It's the same band. It's got the same essence, but I love that it's really a very cultured identity you guys have worked really hard to create.
Well, that's kind of the goal is to have this this thing marinate, and when you're playing in you're playing music and you're playing with, like, I've been with Queens almost 20 years, and um, even along the way there have been different characters in the band. um, there's a chemistry that always has to be there, and that chemistry depends on those characters as well. So um, that that band sounds like it does because of the characters involved. Um, and I think the same thing with this. It had to kind of, we had to kind of bring people along with us, with our EP. Like, this is a guy from Queens, this guy from Mastodon, this guy from At the Drive-In, and a composer that not very many people have heard of. So um, it was sort of like, well, this is the first move that you make. You do an EP, it's heavy, it's dark. Troy's, kind of sang the way he normally sings, and then along the way, everyone started adding, their own flair to this, with the intent, like, this has to be different. And so I'm glad you said that. I think it's its own animal now too. I'm glad that it's kind of bloomed into that. But yeah, it takes time. It takes, like, yeah, when you're making gumbo, the longer it cooks, usually the better it is.
Right on. I have not made a gumbo, but I am doing a lot of cooking during the lock-in
So
and
my
pandemic and shut-ins. Good
a
reference.
lot.
I'm not a big okra fan, so I think that's a
I
holdup
gotta
for me.
say, okra. That's the one thing. I mean, a lot of people don't like it, and I don't blame them, because at first it's like, whoa, this is slimy and seedy and gross. But again, when you put it in a pot with all the elements of gumbo, and you cook it for long enough, that kind of, it becomes part of it. Becomes part of the texture of gumbo, which is a little thick, but it the okra by itself. I understand why people don't dig it.
Our next interview will be cooking with Troy and Keith for sure.
Please do. I'm doing a lot of it, and I'm getting creative. So there's
Nice,
gonna be
nice work.
cooking analogies going on with this interview.
Right on. In addition to what you already talked about with sort of putting different things in and getting different things out with this project, does that affect your playing at all, or your choice of gear, or are you incorporating new things you might not bring into Queens on the gear side?
Well, in a way, yeah. Definitely. I I've I'm a kind of a pedal fanatic, and if it's got a knob on it and a light and a button, or 7 or 8, I mean, I probably have it. So I'm always kind of switching things in and out of my rig, and I'm always making different rigs for this that's different than Queens. Or I did this a few years ago. I went back out on the road with Failure, my old band from the '90s, and I with that rig. It was completely digital, with no amps on stage and nothing, no speakers on stage. And for me, that was great for that project. But that wouldn't really work for that would never work for Queens. And some elements of that and some elements of what I normally do with Queens kind of gets smashed into the Gone is Gone world. And so it's both. It's like analog pedals for certain things, and then digital routing, to different amps and stuff, and putting the reverb in one side, and so yeah, I get into it pretty deep. And I honestly, I think I change my pedal board, for this project every few months.
Nice. What was the last thing you added or acquired that you used on this record?
I basically just got a bunch of stuff from that company called Death by Audio. Do you know them?
Yep, I've heard of them.
Oliver from Place Very Strangers. Um, yeah, I mean, there's they have great. I like the way that they have like a delay pedal that has fuzz, so you can dirty up the delay and it makes noise. And so I've been using the well, there's one called Rooms, and then he's got a fuzz pedal called Fuzz War. And I've had stuff of theirs for a long time, but the newer stuff gets more and more interesting. So there's an evil filter that I've been trying out, but I like mixing that with like Eventide makes really great digital pedals, and they have a pedal called the H9, which is basically every sound that you can get out of an Eventide all in one pedal. So I mess around with that, with dry signals, with wet signals, and stereo, and like I'm kind of getting into looping right now because while there's not much chance of us getting out and playing live with anything, so I'm kind of starting to feel like if I have a one-man band sort of pedal board, then maybe I can do something creative that way. So I'm kind of delving into that. With Gone is Gone, Tony and I always talk about doing remixes, on the fly live. So we might do some of that. So anyways, that's I always have to change things up. Just keep it interesting for me.
Right on. I'm ready for a Troy solo instrumental project with a lot of effects and soundscapes and things. I'm ready for it.
Yeah, yeah,
You could use one more band.
I know I don't have enough bands in my life.
Right, right on.
Yeah.
Just as we start to wind this down, because I want to give you back your day and your time. I'm sure you're very busy with interviews, and I really appreciate chatting with you today. I want to take it back to the very beginning and ask you about what are the records you're spending time with and listening to, since we talked about that already.
Well, it's funny. It's funny. The last record I put on was, and this is because Eddie just passed away, was Van Halen Fair Warning.
Mm.
To me, was like one of their less like popular records, but there's a weirdness to that record that I really like. You can hear like Eddie, he's like playing synths through his Marshalls, which I love. I love like overdriving synths and distorting synths like that. But I just put that record on just as a reminder of like, who he was and what an impact he had on rock and roll and the art of playing guitar. And I always marvel at him because he was doing all this crazy, insane technical stuff and jumping around on stage like really high, and always had a smile. He always had a smile. Like you can't fuck with that. And so I was just kind of like going down a wormhole of watching Van Halen videos of live footage, and it's incredible to watch. And I remember, being a kid and that record came out, and I was just like, it still holds up. Like no doubt. So that's one. I've and I've been kind of messing around with Apple Music too. I'm getting used to the streaming thing, because you got to know how people are listening to music these days if you're going to be in this business. So I don't want to just put on old records and sit and listen and be that guy. So I'll just pop on Apple Music and I'll put on like bluegrass essentials. So you know, in the morning when I'm making breakfast, I'll put on some bluegrass, and it's nothing quite like it. Um, and I'll put on Duke Ellington, like, and it'll be like an hour and a half playlist of every great Duke Ellington performance or song. So I'm kind of running the gamut here, like I always do. I listened to Goodbye Yellow Brick Road the other night too, which is a wonderful record. So there's a few things.
Nice. Thanks for sharing. I appreciate that, especially that Eddie story. I'm also a big Duke fan, so killer stuff, man. Troy, thank you so much for hanging out with Ghost Cult, and I
Yeah, you got it,
really
man.
want to send my congratulations to you and the guys on this new Gone Is Gone record. It's going to really surprise people in a new way that I don't think they're quite ready for.
I hope so. Thank you. Yeah. I'm glad you like it.
All righty. Take care. Thanks so much.
All right. Take it easy. See you.
Peace.